All right, so the new chat had to get put up because I don't know what the hell happened to the first one. So I apologize sincerely. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try and make this work. I'm going to update this post here. I'm going to put these together in a playlist so you can watch them together at the same time on YouTube. Sincerest apologies. I'm super, super sorry. Didn't mean for it to go this way. Let me tweet this out to them all. The new, here we go. That is back up with a new video. Watch it live here on MMA Fighting. So sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. I sincerely apologize. Let's see if I can get a tweet on the old MMA Fighting account. Sorry, y'all. It's embarrassing. What can I do? Let's see here. All right. Let's get back to this. I'm so sorry. But we're back up. We're live. All right. No more being sorry. Let's get down to this, shall we? Boom. Here we go. Refresh your page. New video is up. And I'm mouth breathing. All right. Let's go back up, shall we? All right. Let me finish the true false since I didn't get to it. Time frame of Weidman's surgery injury is too conveniently timed for a rescheduled Rockhold bout at UFC MSG. I don't believe it. McGregor, TMT, the money team are patiently waiting on potential Chinese ownership to pave way for the highest grossing overhyped freak show, uncompetitive boxing pay-per-view ever. False. IOC doping news will have trickle-down effect to UFC. Well, I don't know what IOC news you're talking about. So there's different kinds of ones that have happened. I think you mean the one where they went and retested 2008 Beijing game samples and found 31 of those samples to show up for various drugs of abuse, aka performance, or also performance-enhancing drugs. Maybe. I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe I'll say false, but with a wink and a nod. I don't know. I'll just say this. I've been reading a lot about WADA. Have you seen the global uproar against them? Revelations that the Russian sports generally have been skirting WADA for quite a long time, has been rubbing people the wrong way. But their track and field team, so far they're banned from the 2016 Olympics, although they could get reinstated next month. But we are allegedly in the era of the best anti-doping ever, and it's having virtually no effect. Doping is as widespread and pervasive as ever. Doping, I am certainly not at a point where we should say we should give up on it. I do think there is a reasonable and rational case to, as USADA says, protect the rights of clean athletes. But what I don't want to get into is this idea that the more we punish and the more we go after people, the more we'll stop this behavior. I don't think that really works. And I think what's going to wind up happening is a lot of innocent people are going to get caught up along the way. But if you look around now at the sports that allegedly have the best testing on earth, that are subject to the greatest scrutiny, the amount of cheating that is going on currently is astronomically high. And yet we are told that anti-doping has never been better. I certainly think there is a utility and purpose and value to anti-doping. And I think there's a lot of people who really want to do right by the athletes. I also think that there is an undercurrent of zealotry that pushes a lot of these efforts into territory that becomes less about trying to police something that is not all that policeable, but maybe somewhat policeable, into zero tolerance, more than zero tolerance, a scary level of punitive action and sweeping changes that are not necessarily based in fairness or science, or a lot of other things. Meldonium is banned, and I'm not against that necessarily. I don't really have enough information to say one way or the other that it should be. But is there a significant amount of scientific literature that clearly and specifically notes that meldonium is performance enhancing? And also, what does it mean? They've actually have really no great definition of what performance enhancing means anyway. Creatine's performance enhancing; it's not banned. Anyway. just worth considering that I'm not against USADA. I'm not against anti-doping generally, but this idea that we're going to clean up the sport with these better testing methods that are purported to do wonders, I generally find that to be total fantasy. I don't buy that at all. Any news on Machida's ban violation with Lyoto beat Bisping? Lyoto, I think, would have a good chance against Bisping for sure, but I don't have any update on him and USADA. Let's go up and look at some of these. Fan demographic. Lucas article from MMA Fighting said that UFC and Bellator had similar ratings when I went head-to-head this weekend. When I looked at the number of comments on the MMA Fighting homepage, UFC results and Bellator results around 10 p.m. on Saturday night. There were only 3 comments for Bellator and 600 for the UFC. Can you break down the fan demographic? Yeah, again, Spike TV's got its own audience. And then more than that, the product for UFC is just bigger. I mean, it's one thing to say our prelim ratings on FS1 more or less match the Spike TV ratings. It's quite another to say that's just halfway through our event. In fact, the main card, the thing everyone's here to see, that's next. So it's a bigger product. It's a bigger to-do. It's got more marquee attractions. And again, Spike has their own audience. If Faber were to win, how could he do it? Please tell us how you see that fight going. I don't see how he wins. I have him on the show today, so I'm going to ask him. The guillotine, perhaps he can get to the back. But I just feel like Cruz is just so hard to get a hold of. He's so hard to physically trap. But then again, Cruz, not necessarily a guy who is a tremendous threat to close the show early. Was a tremendous threat to knock you out necessarily, especially when you've got the kind of takedown defense and scrambling ability that Faber does. Faber's hard to hurt, So that fight could go 5 rounds. Anything can happen in 5 rounds. The longer the fight goes, the more you are susceptible to the chaos that MMA brings. But I'll ask him. Who's more prone to injury, Kane or Weidman? Man. Weidman, I guess. UFC 198 takeaways. I think it was Michael Bond who said that Weidman has pulled out of 4 title fights in 25 months. The amount of money he has lost, the amount of prestige he has lost, the amount of opportunity he has given away and had to back up off is just, you say, how could he fight through vertigo? Because you read his message, he had vertigo and he wanted to keep fighting. It's because of that, because he already pulled out 3 times in title fights. I don't think he wants to do it a 4th time. UFC 198 takeaways. What were some of your takeaways from UFC 198? In particular, the following. 1, Cyborg's win. Could she make 135? I spoke to her coach. She told me yes, but it would come with some performance costs, maybe substantial performance costs. Is she the clear-cut, pound-for-pound female fighter in the world? I think she's a candidate, but you got to beat some bigger names to do that. How does she do versus the likes of Tate, Rousey, and Holm? I like her chances against Tate. Holm, I don't know, because Holm can stick and move. I feel like that might be the kind of person who can give her trouble. And against Rousey, I don't know. I think I would favor Cyborg at this point, although I didn't used to be that way, but I might be that way now. Maia's win, reaction to his performance, title shot, boring. He can be, I guess, depending on your perspective. I think there's probably a portion of the MMA fan base who finds what he does a little bit less than stellar. This would be so utterly amazing. He's absorbed 12 significant strikes in the last 3 fights combined. He just loves to take you down, get to your back, and then work from there because it's a really, really – where's a safe place to be in someone's fight? In your fight, in anyone's fight. Where's a safe place to be? It's on someone's back, particularly if you have expert back control and maintaining that position. It's just someone on your back, and you have to fight this way. It's a terrible way to fight if you're the person whose back has been taken. This is a horrible, horrible place to be. And it's not just a guy on your back. It's the guy on your back. That can really be quite stressful and difficult to deal with. So if you watch the Monday Morning Analyst, and I can't encourage you enough, I felt really good about the last episode. You should see what Maia does. Maia goes for a single leg, and he can't get it. So what he winds up doing is he stays on one single leg, and he kind of does a trip, but he trips not that way. He trips over himself, and he pulls Brown into mount, sort of. It's 3/4 mount. He always keeps one hook under the back left ankle of Brown. He uses that. He has to take a shot to do it, but he goes to deep half, and from deep half he rotates counterclockwise and then again. So what most people would do is they would go clockwise, counterclockwise, and then hit a double off of the knee tap on the ground. And I went back and showed that on the slides. He doesn't do that. He is amazing at this. He goes clockwise, counterclockwise, then trying to double off, goes back to counterclockwise to take Brown over the side of his blocked leg. He's incredible. He's truly, truly incredible. One of the few guys who will give up that kind of position for a takedown. And you think, oh, you got this guy in mount. He pulled you there. Because look, think about it this way. Drill. Right? It's you versus Demian Maia. And Demian Maia is like, you can start in mount. Okay? Who's going to be able to really hold him there? Jacare, maybe, somebody like that. That's about it. It's about you can have everything you want on him, and it's not really going to go all that well for you. He's going to get out. Now, you might be able to beat him up a little bit along the way, but you can just see his mastery of the positions and his ability to go between them quickly is just otherworldly. It's just you just don't know guys like that. Heavyweights. Will there ever come a day when a heavyweight will reign in a division like GSP? I think only if they're younger. In Ottawa for the fight nights, I will not. Finally, as many have already commented, Ariel and Jeff were 100% wrong about the pay-per-view versus FS1 card numbers. Canada is ashamed. Well, Canada's not ashamed, but okay. By the way, Atletico will destroy Real. It's Atletico. Well, and that's a great way to end your comments. Hey, you know that thing you like? F it. Oh, okay, great. Let's see. Someone's asking about Rockwell versus Jacare. Did you know, Luke Thomas, that your name is an anagram of Kul Mothos? Luke, what is your opinion on showing fighters KOs and TKOs, submissions, and decision wins when being introduced just like boxing? I have to think about it. That's a good question, actually. Like, he has 40 wins, 38 by way of knockout, blah, 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 blah. It'd be interesting if they had by stoppage, because there's so many different ways to win by stoppage. So if someone has these 20 wins, 15, or let's say 10 by way of stoppage, I wouldn't be opposed to it. That's interesting. I'd have to hear it and see how it feels. But that sounds like an interesting idea. And do you have the biggest arms in MMA journalism? Probably, but that's not saying much. UFC 201 in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on the main event? Is Tyron Woodley deserving of a title shot, or do you think the UFC gave it to him because he whined long enough? This one should not be all that confusing, guys. Should not be all that confusing. Now, just because it's not confusing doesn't mean it's not unappealing. With you on that. But here's the truth. Just go down the roster. Here, let's look at the roster again. This is not a hard one to figure out. All right, so you've got the UFC has, after 200, they've got 201, 202, 203, 204. 205, we'll see what happens with that. They're going to hold Lawler for that. Lawler needs to compete. They had to keep him active. They need a pay-per-view headliner, a welterweight title fight prize is something suitable for a pay-per-view headliner. So they've got shows. And because they've got shows, the UFC does, they've got cards they got to fill. They got cards they got to fill. They got main event slots they need to fill. Lawler's part of that guy who's open and available for those slots. Okay? So he's going to be part of that. They just got to big shows. When you ask who's available for him, you could have said Thompson versus Lawler, but they didn't. Now, why didn't they want to? Well, maybe because Roy's at the end of his contract and they want to send a message. Maybe it's because they just believe that the winner of that is the one who's most deserving. Whatever the case, that fight's already made. Plus, it's not merely that you have these pay-per-view cards you have to fill. You have these fight night cards you have to fill. And I'm sorry, Woodley has already lost to McDonald, if I'm not mistaken, correct? I think that was a boring fight, if I'm not mistaken. Rory McDonald. When was that fight? Yeah, he beat Tyron Woodley just in June of 2014. That was just 2 years ago. And it wasn't a great fight. So he's already lost. So do you really want to make a McDonald versus Woodley fight for a fight night headliner? I'm not saying you couldn't do that because Rory's the hometown attraction in Ottawa, but it's not the same as a Wonder Boy one, right? So that's the other problem. Now, you could say, well, Woodley's not necessarily lighting the world on fire as a title contender against Lawler. That's true, but it's a title fight. The title sort of confers some level of prestige there that would otherwise be missing, where a fight night does not. Again, a fight night where a guy already lost, and there's no point in making that necessarily. And then you just look at the rest of the guys who are at welterweight. Demian Maia, I guess you could give him a title shot. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I don't know that people are necessarily clamoring for that in terms of the excitement. You've got who knows what he wants to take. Hendricks is locked up. Magny's not quite there deserving just yet. Matt Brown just lost. Dong Kim not there. Safady not there. Story not there. Nelson not there. Aslam's tied up. Lombard and Alves. Great choices there. It seemed to me it's less of, hey, what's the most exciting fight we can put on, and more of, hey, how do we best use our resources for the different values that we have, either to fill out a card, to fill out two cards, to fill out two cards in a particular market. They want to go back to Canada with a stronger, even if it's a fight night card, they want to have a strong fight night card. I'm not saying that you couldn't have given him Maya, given everything that's going on, but I think Woodley is, given all the other circumstances, not the worst choice in the world. Will we see you in Atlanta? Nope. Replacement fighter. Oh, I'll do one more of these. Actually, we'll come back to this. Let me go to Twitter machine since I've badly neglected it. You plan on taking a stage dive at Hatebreed? No, I do not. I'm too old and too big for that. I'll kill someone if I stage dove. Any chance Miocic versus Reem headlines a non-pay-per-view show or co-mains a pay-per-view? Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible, especially as a co-main on a pay-per-view. Speaking of anti-doping, why are all banned substances punished the same? Seems they don't work all the same. I don't know how to answer that. Where exactly on the spectrum of rocked to KTFO seizures is the land of wind and ghosts? Closer to KTFO seizures. True or false? Canelo fights Golovkin in 2017. I'll say true. Bisping needs to ask Vitor for his doctor's number and get some of that fighting juice, because this won't be pretty. All right. Scale of 1 to 10 on these matchups. Dodson versus Lineker. Ooh, that's an 8. Rothwell versus Verdum. 7. Kane versus Hunt. What's your thoughts on Weidman's injury history? There was an article in The Atlantic written recently. There is some existing scientific research to suggest that some people just, I think we talked about this before, injure more easily than others. And this is burgeoning science. It's hardly definitive. There's still a lot of work being done on this about to what extent people's tendons and muscle fibers and ligaments, to what extent some are built sturdier than others at the, I wouldn't say the molecular level, but certainly the cellular level, and whether to what extent same kind of challenges and loads. I told you, the guy who repaired this shoulder, I had labrum surgery on the shoulder. The guy who repaired it was the former surgeon for the Washington Redskins, and he was telling me one of the most surprising things, was not surprising exactly, but when he would athletes, and he would look at how the ligaments worked and the bones, everything put together, he was just not alarmed. He was just shocked. The way he said it was, he goes, they're just not built like you and me. Like, everything is sturdier, everything is thicker, everything is harder and more connective. The connective tissue is just stronger. Everything is stronger, which makes a lot of sense. It's not, merely the genetics of muscles. It's the genetics of the entire body as well, the cardiovascular system and the endocrine system and everything else working in conjunction. They're just built differently. And I think that extends as well as, we know some professional athletes like Weidman get injured more than others. But I believe that generally I don't think it's accidental, and I think it's really, really tough, unfortunate luck. But I believe these guys are just trying to fight against their biological conditions, and you can see that as a very, very difficult thing to do. Can you talk about Bisping finally getting his title shot? Well deserved. Let's look at his resume real quick, because I often feel like just re-glancing at it, even if you kind of know really well, is sort of important. So just for a matter of record, he won the Ultimate Fighter 3. since UFC Team Ortiz versus Team Shamrock finale. This was June of 2006. He beat Josh Haynes. Then he beat Eric Red Schaefer. I love Eric Schaefer. Then he beat Elvis Sinisic, one of the pioneers of Australia. Then he beat Matt Hamill. That was close. That was UFC 75. That was in London, England, his second fight in England in a row for the UFC. Then he lost to Rashad, but it was close. And this is all still at 205. Mixed middleweight against Chainsaw Charles McCarthy at UFC 83. He beats him via TKO. Then he beat Jason Day in the first round, and then he beat Chris Lieben. Then he loses to Dan Henderson at UFC 100. Oof. Comes back and beats Dennis Kang. Loses to Vanderlei Silva. So you got Dan Hendo, TRT, Vanderlei Silva, who knows what he was doing. Then it's Dan Miller. Then he beats Jorge Rivera. Then he beats Jason Miller off of another season of The Ultimate Fighter. Then he loses to Chael Sonnen. You all know about Chael's history, and that was super controversial. Then he beats Brian Stan. Then he loses to Vitor Belfort, which everyone knows about. Then he beats Alan Belcher. Then he loses to Tim Kennedy, fair and square. Then he loses to Kung Lee. You all know what happened. No, excuse me, he beats Kung Lee. I'm sorry. Then he loses to Luke Rockhold. Then he beats CB Dalloway. Then Talis Lipes, and then Anderson Silva. Man, what the guy has been there for. These names, some of these guys aren't even competing in MMA anymore. He did it across 2 weight classes. The guys he's lost to, Luke Rockhold, Tim Kennedy, those guys seem to be above board. Then you got Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Vanderlei Silva, Dan Henderson, and then, of course, Rashad Evans, but that was at 205. He's just had some tough luck, man. He's had a really tough luck, and long time coming. You got to be happy for him. Far less than ideal circumstances, but, I wonder how he's even going to be able to make weight. See about that. Let's see. I see a potential matchup of Stipe and Overeem playing out. This will be exactly the opposite of the Verdum fight because Overeem's going to want to fight at distance. He's going to want to stay away from that short-range boxing of Miocic, the big power punching. And the question is, to what extent can he do that? Stripping Minikov of the title, does he return to Bellator or does he sit out his contract? It sounded to me like he's on the verge of sitting out his contract if he can continue to fight in fight nights. What do you think of Bellator's release of lightweight champion of Brooks? Was this avoidable? I don't know how avoidable it was, to be honest. Look, to me, everyone talks about, well, there's this free agency thing and it's growing and it's changing in mixed martial arts, and that's all true, of course. But here's the fact of the matter. What you're seeing is a lot of guys in their 30s who are over the glamour of UFC, who have families and children, and they can see the end is not near, but it ain't too far away either. And they wanted to go where they can get the best offer. And even if that means being the biggest fish in a small pond, then that's what that means. That's very different than someone like Brooks, who's still in his 20s. Now he's 29, but he's still in a space where he hasn't quite tasted the highest level of what he thinks he's capable of doing. And that seems to me a very, very understandable thing. But to me, the real question is when someone in their 20s go to Bellator, will someone in their 30s, not that this is the same kind of deal, but someone who's already an established star, been in Bellator for a long time, will they then jump ship? But to me, someone in the 30s going down, someone in their 20s going up, earth-shattering change. All right, let's go back to replacement fighters on deck. Luke, why doesn't the UFC have on-deck fighters so they're not scrambling to find a replacement if an injury occurs? Sometimes they do. Why not have the main fight set and have another fighter on deck just in case one fighter gets hurt? Compensate the on-deck fighter for his 8 to 10 week training camp. If he's not used, that way we get rid of the 2 weeks notice fights because he would have had a full camp. The problem is they have done this on occasion, and it has. I'm not saying it hasn't worked, but if you're substituting someone for a replacement, you're typically getting someone who's in that headlining orbiting space. That means you're keeping them occupied and not using them, rather than putting them on a card somewhere else and then having them train for that. So there's a cost associated with it. Moreover, it just becomes, I won't say expensive, but you're going to get injured. Now, you can say someone like Weidman, you might want to do it. Fair enough. But, if people are willing to take fights on short notice, do you really need to have that? What you just don't want is the whole thing collapsing week out. That's what you don't want. But they've done it in certain circumstances, and in certain circumstances it might make sense. But as a general policy, what you wind up doing is you keep headliners from being booked on other cards because you need them. You need a headliner just in case another headliner falls out. That becomes burdensome to the promotional needs. All in on this Mayweather talking to John Jones stuff. After putting on your Dana hat, what would be your predictions and actions to the following situations? Number one, assume partial sale, 10% of UFC shares, 300 mil. Will be my actions. I can't answer that because I have different priorities than Dana White. Worst injury I've ever received in jiu-jitsu. I recently started training and broke my hand the second week. Jesus. What did you do? Did you not tap to a wrist lock or something? What's the worst injury you've gotten, if any? Is there a way to decrease chances of injury? Yeah, there is a way, especially if you just start rolling. Don't be a spaz. White belt tries to just raw their way through things. It's not how it works. There's a way to, like, you are not going to get out of anything raging unless you are just the Incredible Hulk. All right? It's just not going to work. You have to technically get out of things. And if you don't know how to do it, ask questions, work on it, drill, watch videos, and then start applying things. But you are not going to get anything raging. If someone has got you in a bad hold, tap. Do not be a donk. Especially something like a wrist lock where, I mean, I'm not sure what part of your hand you broke, but like, see a lot of white belts will do this bit where they hold your lapel, but they don't hold it really tight. Like, they don't white knuckle it. And whenever you do that, you can just take their elbow and press it into you, and the wrist will go like that, and then it'll keep going like that. And you can imagine it doesn't feel too awesome. I catch people like that all the time. I've been caught like that a bunch, actually. That's how I started doing it. So, you know, things like that, sort of mind your gripping. And but more than that, I tell women is more often than not, like, I get letters from women being like, hey, how do I avoid injury? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a 135-pound girl, but my wife is. And what we're done is just say no to certain roles. So, like, you know, there's donks out there, and they're not, they might be nice people, but they're donks to roll with. Don't roll with them. Just say no. Like, no, man, I'm good. No, thanks. You don't owe anybody a roll. You don't owe anybody else a roll. Don't do that. So say no to the people who you know are spazzes. And if you are a spaz, stop. You're going to beat anybody spazzing. Worst injury. You're going to laugh at this. It's the same one that Dominic Cruz has. Now, he probably has it much worse. Plantar fasciitis. Yeah. It's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. And the only way to get rid of it for me was to stop training. I think I had to stop for like 6 weeks. And it was super hard to get rid of. And it didn't come back, but you can't put your foot down. There's massive pain in your feet. You can't use them properly. And you say, oh, that's not a big deal. Joe last week, and he was talking about what a pain in his ass it is. It is not merely chronic. It is painful. And not merely chronic and painful. It is debilitating. It literally limits your athletic potential. But I've never had an arm snapped or a knee twisted or an ankle hurt like that. What do you make of Vitor's reasons for his loss to Jacare? He stated, Saturday was a day that I went to work but didn't work, and I was focused on the defense and lost my main quality, the attack. That's true. Vitor fought his 37th fight against Jacare in his amazing 20-year career, and against Jacare, he looked almost helpless at some points. But how much longer can he fight at the top level? I don't think he can fight at the top level. That's what I think. I think those days have absolutely passed. So, what you saw him doing against Jacare was I had someone write me being like, there's no way he's a black belt. He can't get out of mount. And I'm thinking to myself, I can name a bunch of black belts who can't get out of Jacare's mount. That doesn't tell me anything. Probably Chris Weidman, too. You know, Chris Weidman's probably those D1 wrestling bases. You ever go up against a dude who used to wrestle D1? I've done it a couple times. It's like to move a refrigerator, man. It is. They have ridiculous base. They cannot be swept unless you're very good. You know, very, very good. And I just think why. You know, I noticed there was one moment where was not necessarily putting his weight down, but he had his knees pinched, and you can see Vitor trying to bridge. He couldn't even get his hips off the ground. I don't know if he's had injuries or he just lacks the kind of explosion he needs to still compete anymore. But that bridge was just so nothing, and that would not surprise me if someone was sitting closer to his hips. So your shoulders are here, your hips are here. If someone's sitting on your hips, it is going to be hard to bridge. In fact, you might have to bridge once to get their weight moving again, and then you might have to bridge a second, third, or even fourth time to really create the space to recapture half guard, or if they're a donk, you can flip them over or whatever the case. But it's not just the one bridge. But He wasn't really even putting his weight down. He was putting his weight down a little bit, but not much. And still the bridge was like hamburger high, man. It was not a lot going on there. And so to me, that just says, like, he's just older. He's just older. You know, you're not going to have the same bridging at 40 that you did at 20. At 20, you can explode out of things when you bridge. At 40, it's going to be a lot harder. So, you know, I'm sure he's training hard. I'm sure he wants to do well. And you know, maybe against lesser opponents he could, but against this level, it's just not going to go too well for him. He's losing to guys in ways you would expect someone outside the top 15 to lose, isn't he? Like decisively, dominantly. Not so great. All right, we have to go. So let me just do this. I apologize for the chat difficulties. I'm going to make a playlist and put them together, and I'll put them back in the MMA Fighting window and on YouTube. I'm so sorry about it. I didn't mean for it to happen. I don't know how else to fix it. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with me. Give it a thumbs up if you can. iTunes.com/promotional malpractice. We're on SoundCloud as well. The Luke Thomas Show, 4 p.m. today. We're going to have Deontay Wilder and Uriah Faber, so that should be fun. SiriusXM 93. All right. Until next time. Sorry, guys. And